Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Swiss MLB Wednesday. We got a bunch of games on the board. It's a loaded one. We're not going to do the 2 live shows, though, like we usually do on Wednesdays. We're just going to do one live show, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and go through the whole slate. So if you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. As far as Tuesday night, good Lord, man. So, man, what a frustrating night for me. Well, first of all, I'll start with the positive. My top bet hit. Rangers. Jumped on it right away, minus 120. Love that bet. They actually almost blew it in the 9th inning, but they gave up a solo home run to make it a 1-run game, but they won. So that's a positive. Other than that, I mean, nothing but heartbreaks tonight. The Yankees. Oh, my God. What an infuriating game that was to watch. Now, obviously, I was happy the Mets won. I'm a Mets fan, but I really liked the Yankees tonight. And even though they didn't get to Quintana, I was still comfortable in the top of the 6th inning. 1-1. The Mets bullpen is taxed. They've been shitty. I loved my spot there with the Yankees, and they just did nothing. Wow. Such a frustrating loss there. But let's put it in the past. Rough Tuesday night for me. To move on to Wednesday. Yeah, let's get it going.
Welcome to the Source. The Source. Hey, get the Source.
Next up, we got Boston on the road in Coors Field. Rockies are dogs at home here, plus 136. Total sitting at 10.5. We got Nick Pivetta pitching for the Bo Sox. Cal Quantrill's on the mound for the Rockies. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got a lean on the Red Sox here. 3.09 to 2.09 after 5 innings. 5.41 to 4.22 final score. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. Boston has been the more profitable team on the season, plus 2.1%. Rockies are at minus 7.9%. Lately, though, the Rockies have been more profitable. Plus 21.5% in the last 10 games, plus 90% in the last 5 games. If you've been betting the Rockies, you've been cashing. You've been making some money. And also, same goes for the Rockies at home. Plus 37.6% ROI in the last 10 games at home. And also, they're profitable on the season at home. Plus 5.5% on the season. The Red Sox were, and they still are, one of the most profitable road teams in baseball this year, plus 15%, but not recently. Minus 2.9% in their last 10 games on the road. So recently, ROI numbers point towards the Rockies here. So let's go ahead and get into the numbers. We'll start with the Boston Bats, and they look great. Last 30 days, this is a top 10, maybe even a top 5 lineup. 7th in WRC+, 3rd in OPS, 4th in WOBA. As far as the numbers on the road, also looking great. Last 30 days, top 10 lineup on the road. They're also a top 10 road lineup on the season. So the Red Sox have been hitting on the road pretty consistently all year. Their numbers against right-handed pitching look amazing. In the last 30 days, this is the best lineup in baseball against righties. First. So they're definitely seeing right-handed pitching right now. Look at their numbers against righty starters. It looks excellent. The last 8 righty starters to pitch against the Red Sox, 8.31 ERA, 182 whip. So definitely getting to righty starters. And when you pull up the game logs, it's just Gavin Stone. Gavin Stone pitched a good game against Boston on the 19th. But rewind before the All-Star break, they were absolutely tattooing every single righty starter they saw. Literally every name on this list. Brady Singer, Seth Lugo, Medina, Joey Estes, Luis Heel, Garrett Cole. Every righty starter that Red Sox saw, they crushed. The Red Sox also have really nice numbers against the type of pitcher Cal Quantrill is. First of all, he struggles with walks, 8.9% walk rate on the year. The Red Sox against righties with a walk rate above 8%. Second as far as scoring runs, 8th as far as getting guys on base. And also, Cal Quantrill, not a strikeout guy. 18.04% strikeout rate on the season. Boston, much better against righties that don't generate strikeouts. So a real nice start to the handicap for Boston's bats. And we bring up Cal Quantrill numbers. I mean, that's not going to scare us off Boston. In his last 9 starts, 5.04 ERA, 152 whip. Last 4 starts, 7.36 ERA. His numbers at home in Coors are actually better. He's got a 4.50 ERA and a 1.55 whip in his last 4 starts at home. So that's something for Cal Quantrill. He's actually pitched pretty well in this weird-ass ballpark. Here are his game logs, and you can see, look at the home starts. Against the Giants, 6 innings, 7 base runners, 3 earned runs. You'll take that in Coors. Home start before that, against the Brewers, 5 innings, 2 earned runs, even though he did allow 9 base runners in that game. Home start before that, Nats, 6 innings, 3 earned runs, 8 base runners. You'll take that in Coors. So he's actually been somewhat serviceable in his last few home starts. Another thing you might like about Cal Quantrill here is he's got better numbers against lefty bats. 315 WOBA, 128 whip. It's not crazy, but they are definitely better than his numbers against righties. 342 WOBA, 139 whip. The reason I bring that up is Boston is extremely lefty heavy. 6 lefties projected to be in the lineup for the Red Sox, including 5 of their first 6 hitters. So that's definitely a nice look for Quantrill if you're looking to back him. Pitch mix-wise, he's really reliant on 2 pitches, the sinker and the splitter. Boston 13th and 26th against those 2 pitches in the last 30 days. So that's another decent look for Cal Quantrill here. Now, his history against Boston isn't great, though. In his last 3 starts against Boston, this is dating back to 2021, he's 0-1 with a 6.61 ERA and a 1.59 whip. So he's struggled pitching against the Red Sox in the past. But this year's Red Sox team is a little different than in years past. A lot of new faces in the lineup, and the current Red Sox bats only have 30 career plate appearances against Cal Quantrill and a 477 OPS. So maybe Cal Quantrill has struggled against Boston in the past, but the current Red Sox bats have terrible lifetime numbers against Quantrill. Overall, though, that's not going to be enough for me to trust Cal Quantrill. I mean, he has been better at home. He does have nicer numbers against lefty bats, and the current Red Sox bats have bad lifetime numbers against him. There are some angles there for Cal Quantrill, but what the Red Sox have done to righty starters over the last few weeks, can't overlook that. Especially in Coors Field, I expect the Red Sox to score runs on Cal Quantrill. On the other side, we got the Rockies bats. Now, remember, when you're talking about the Rockies, you always got to use adjusted numbers. So always look at WRC+. If you look at the last 30 days, 29th in baseball. OPS and WOBA are always going to look better for the Rockies because they play a lot of games in Coors Field. But 29th in the adjusted metrics, WRC+. Same goes for the numbers at home. 14th in OPS, 16th in WOBA, but they play at Coors. 27th in WRC+, 29th on the season for the Rockies. So definitely not good. Their numbers against right-handed pitching, same story. I mean, 16th in OPS, 19th in WOBA, but 25th in WRC+ against righties in the last 30 days, 29th on the season. So the Rockies have not been hitting. Well, if you use the last 14 days, I guess you could say, hey, Rockies are hitting righties, but super small sample size with the All-Star break included. Their numbers against righty starters, the last 8 righties to pitch against the Rockies, 4.10 ERA, 1.28 whip. So not particularly good. If you look at the game logs, you can find some instances where they did get to righty starters here. Logan Webb, Frankie Montas they got to. Well, actually, that's about it. Oh, Christian Scott. They got to Christian Scott as well. But I know that Christian Scott game was in Coors Field. It's really tough to get a read on the Rockies. If you watch the live show, you know I pass on these Coors Field games all the time just because it's so unpredictable, in my opinion. At least for my process, it is. I got some bad news for the Rockies. Nick Pivetta is a strikeout guy. 29.36% strikeout rate on the season. Rockies, one of the worst lineups in baseball against righties with a strikeout rate above 24%. So you definitely don't like to see that. And you also don't like to see, if you're a Rockies fan, that Pivetta's been dealing. In his last 3 starts, he's got a 1.83 ERA, 0.71 whip. His numbers on the road are nuts. In his last 5 road starts, he's got a 2.08 ERA, 0.79 whip. In his last 2, he's got a 0 ERA and an 0.46 whip. Here are his game logs, and I mean, look at this dude's last 2 road starts. 6 shutout innings on the road in Dodger Stadium, just 3 base runners. Before that, 7 shutout innings on the road in Miami, just 3 base runners. Untouchable. So his last 2 road starts, Pivetta looks so good. He's also been excellent against bad lineups. Look at these splits here. Against top 10 lineups, just 17 1/3 innings pitched, he's gotten rocked. 7.27 ERA, 1.79 whip. But when he's pitched against bad lineups, 33 2/3 innings pitched, 2.94 ERA and an 0.86 whip. So when he's gotten the opportunity to pitch against bad teams, which we know the Rockies are, he's been really, really good. Pivetta's also got nice-looking splits against lefty bats. 2.67 WOBA and a 1.02 whip. The Rockies are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lefties in the lineup. So there's another nice little angle for Pivetta there. Pitch mix-wise, he throws the 4-seam fastball and the slider. Rockies are 19th and 15th against those 2 pitches in the last 30 days. So really nothing to take away there. Now, up until this point in the handicap, things are looking pretty great for Nick Pivetta. But now we need to take a look at his history against the Rockies. Now, take these with a grain of salt. These were back in 2017, 2018. So you might be thinking that doesn't mean anything. He's 0-3 with a 14.59 ERA, 2.35 whip. Now, obviously, it's not going to be many members of the Rockies lineup that are still there in 2018, if any. But 2 of these 3 starts were in Coors Field. So Pivetta, historically bad in Coors Field, even though it was 7-8 years ago. The current Rockies lineup does have a 10.29 career OPS against Pivetta, but we're only talking about 17 plate appearances. So we really don't have data here as far as Pivetta against the current Rockies bats. But we can say in the past, 7-8 years ago, he really struggled when he went on the road to Coors Field. Bullpen matchup, I mean, I don't know. I guess you'd have to say Boston has the better bullpen based on the full season numbers, but both of these bullpens have been pretty awful in the last 30 days, so really no advantage either way there. And offensively against bullpens, kind of even. I mean, slight edge to the Red Sox based on the fact that Rockies play in Coors Field. But still, the Rockies have been active in the late innings, so let's give them some credit. Really no advantage either way in the late innings. As far as betting this game, it would only be Boston here for me. I haven't bet this one yet, but I think I might lay the 1.5 with the Red Sox. I think you can get a plus 100. We just saw Cooper Criswell throw a gem in Coors Field last night. I like the spot even better for Pivetta. He's been so good away from home. His struggles at Coors Field were so many years ago that I don't think they're very relevant. I like Boston to crush Cal Quantrill as well. Maybe a Red Sox team total over. Also, Devers hitting props. He has really nice numbers against Cal Quantrill's pitch mix. So if you're looking to throw in a hitter prop, maybe make some kind of crazy-ass parlay or something, maybe throw some Devers in there. But personally, I think I might just stick with Red Sox minus 1.5. I haven't bet this one yet, but I'm really considering it. Boston minus 1.5 for pass for me. Next up, we got Houston on the road in Oakland. A's are dogs at home here, plus 135. Total sitting at 8.5. Hunter Brown is pitching for Houston. JP Sears is on the mound for the A's. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. We got a slight lean on Houston through 5 innings, 3.1 to 2.96, but a slight lean on Oakland final score, 5.25 to 4.96. So let's go ahead and get into this one. We'll start with the Astros bats. Last 30 days, pretty average. 15th in WRC+, 16th in OPS, 16th in WOBA. Definitely seem to be trending in the wrong direction. But again, last 14 days is a crazy sample size to use with the All-Star break. So not going to draw too much away from it. Just point out that the Astros seem to be trending in the wrong direction. That's all. Same goes for their numbers on the road. Last 30 days, this is a top 10 road lineup. But again, last 14 days seem to be trending the wrong way. Numbers against left-handed pitching. This one's a little weird because they haven't seen a ton of left-handed pitching, and we'll get into it in a second. But in the last 30 days, the Astros are a top 10 lineup against lefties. And if you pull up their numbers against lefty starters, the last 5 they've seen, 4.62 ERA, 1.54 WHIP. So that's pretty solid. Not great. They've been active against lefty starters. When you pull up the game logs, I mean, Heaney, Trevor Rogers, that's on July 12th, July 9th, July 3rd. Then we're back into June. They really haven't seen much left-handed pitching, and they're getting to him, but not really. I mean, Andrew Heaney, 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs. That's a decent start. Trevor Rogers, that's an okay start. I mean, it's not that they're getting blanked by lefties, but the last few were able to put together quality starts against them. If you rewind back to late June, they definitely were getting to lefty starters, though. Quintana, Gomber, they even got to Garrett Crochet back when nobody was. Tariq Skubal they got to. So if we rewind a month ago, the Astros were getting to lefty starters when they were seeing them, but then they kind of stopped seeing lefties, and the ones that they have seen sporadically in there actually gave them some problems. So what do we think about their matchup with JP Sears? Well, JP Sears seems to have righted the ship a little bit. In his last 4 starts, he's got great numbers. A 2.42 ERA, 1.07 WHIP. He was going through a real rough stretch in there. The Twins just crushed him in back-to-back starts. But look at his numbers at home. Again, his last 2 home starts, 1.69 ERA, 1.12 WHIP. So JP Sears, I think it's 4 straight solid starts. And here are the game logs. It is 4 straight. Angels, Boston, Angels, D-backs. So 4 solid starts for JP Sears in a row. If you rewind back before that, you see the Twins. He pitched against the Twins back-to-back when the Twins were red hot too. That's a nightmare. They absolutely smoked him twice in a row. Before that, he actually got rocked by the Padres too. So if you rewind back getting close to early June, he was getting hit up, but recently he's been solid. The thing that worries me about JP Sears is he's done so much of his damage against bad lineups on the season against bottom 10 lineups versus lefties, 2.38 ERA and a 1.01 WHIP. So he's done a lot of his damage against lineups that can't hit left-handed pitching. When he pitches against lineups that can hit lefties, he's been really awful. And the Astros on the season, I believe, are 11th in WRC plus against lefties. They're also a top 10 road lineup. I think they are 10th on the season on the road. So the Astros are right on the borderline of what would be a top 10 lineup. Something else that worries me about JP Sears, his numbers against righty bats. 3.54 WOBA, 141 WHIP, way better than his numbers against lefty bats, and that is not what you want to hear before pitching against Houston, because they have one of the more righty-heavy lineups in baseball. Seven right-handed bats projected to be in the lineup for the Astros. That's a terrible sign for JP Sears. Now, pitch mix-wise, it's looking good, though. Throws a slider and the 4-seam fastball. Those are his 2 main pitches. Astros bottom 10 in baseball against both those pitches, so that's solid. And also, JP Sears weirdly has had a lot of success against Houston. In his last 3 starts against the Astros, he's 2-0 with a 1.59 ERA and an 0.94 WHIP. So he's pitched great against this team. That being said, the current Astros bats, they don't have terrible numbers against them. They're hitting 247 lifetime off them with a 710 OPS. So it's not like he's blanked them, but when he's pitched against the Astros, he's actually performed well. Personally, that's not enough for me. All those righties in the Astros lineup scares me. JP Sears, 4 straight good starts. He's almost due to get rocked. I expect the Astros to get to him with all those righties. So I like the Astros to score runs here. On the other side, we got the Oakland Athletic bats who are all of a sudden red hot. In the last 30 days, this is a top 5 lineup. Actually, one of the best lineups in baseball over the last 2 weeks. Same goes for their numbers at home. Last 30 days, 3rd in WRC plus, 8th in OPS. Last 2 weeks, even better than that. Their numbers against right-handed pitching look great. Last 30 days, this is a top 10 lineup versus righties, 7th in WRC plus, 13th in OPS. Even better than that as of late. They're getting to righty starters, 6.33 ERA and a 150 whip. That's the last 4 righty starters to pitch against Oakland. So they're getting to righty starters. Here are the game logs. Crushed Griffin Canning. Didn't touch Tanner Houck, actually. Crushed Pivetta. Crushed Brian Bayo. They also hit up Spencer Arrighetti last night as well. It's not on this graphic. So 4 of the last 5 righty starters to pitch against Oakland got hit up. They really are producing offensively, which brings us to Hunter Brown. Now, if you remember, you rewind 3-4 weeks ago, Hunter Brown was probably the hottest starting pitcher in baseball. I mean, he was throwing as well as anybody. Him and Logan Gilbert were both dealing. In his last 8 starts, you could still see it. 184 ERA and a 112 whip. Hasn't quite been the same. He's had a couple bad starts recently. Last 3 starts up to a 450. His numbers on the road kind of look the same as that. Last 6 road starts look great. Last 2 road starts, not so much. Here are his game logs. And I mean, look back to late June into early July there. I mean, 6 shutout innings, 6 shutout innings, 7 shutout innings. He was dealing. Then he got absolutely crushed by the Twins. I mean, they murdered him. He also gave up a... So it was really just one bad start. I misspoke. It was just one bad start. Then the Rangers were able to hit and score 2 runs off him, and the Rangers haven't been getting to righty starters. So that was kind of perceived as a bad start because everyone thought he should have dealt there. But Hunter Brown's been dominant, and then he bounced back on the 19th, 6 shutout innings against the Mariners. Really not trying to throw him a parade for that, though. Seattle's not hitting righties at all. Something I don't like for Hunter Brown here are his numbers against righty bats. He's definitely had more success against lefty bats this year. 311 WOBA, 124 whip. Against righties, 333 and a 151. So he struggled a little bit more against righties. Oakland's more on the righty-heavy side. They're projected to have 5 righties in the lineup. So I don't like that for Hunter Brown. Also, his pitch mix. His main pitch is the 4-seam fastball. His secondary pitch is the cutter. Oakland 11th and 2nd against those 2 pitches in the last 30 days. So it's another thing I don't like for Hunter Brown. I do have good news for Hunter Brown, though. He's pitched really well against this team. He's made 4 career starts against Oakland all last season. So he made 4 starts against Oakland last year. He was 2-0 with a 188 ERA and an 083 whip. So he dealt against Oakland last season. I think we can all agree that Oakland right now is certainly not Oakland last season. They're hitting on another level, one of the hottest offenses in baseball right now. So I'm not trying to step in front of him. I think we can count on Oakland to hit off Hunter Brown as good as he's been. As far as the bullpen matchup, you definitely got to give the edge to Houston here. Last 30 days, the Astros have been a top 10 bullpen. The Oakland bullpen is definitely struggling. I mean, earlier in the season, they were really good. Definitely a bottom half bullpen in the last 30 days. Offensively against bullpens, though, it's Oakland. They've been one of the hottest lineups in baseball in the late innings. So actually, the matchup in the late innings is closer to even. As far as betting this game, like I said, I like the Astros to get to JP Sears, even though he's had success against this lineup in the past. And even though Houston in the last few days hasn't been putting a lot of runs up, I still think they get to Sears in this one. So I like the Astros to score runs. Problem is, I'm really not trying to step in front of this Oakland Athletics lineup right now. There's a sentence I never thought I'd say. They're red hot, hitting everybody. So even though Hunter Brown has been pretty reliable, I mean, he's been really reliable over the last month and a half, 2 months, I don't know if I can fully back them. So it'll be Houston -1.5 or Houston team total over. I'm circling between those 2 bets. If you trust this Oakland A's lineup, maybe just rock with the over 8.5 in this one. So I'll put all 3 bets up on the screen. It'll be Houston -1.5, Houston team total over 4.5, or the over 8.5. Real quick, something I wanted to point out on Outlier. This actually goes against my bets. But check this out. This is actually, we'll go to Houston. That's actually yesterday's game, but the same trend applies. The under has hit in 23 of the Astros' last 35 games as a favorite. Now 24 of the last 36 after tonight's game. So the Astros went favored. It's been under. I don't think that's enough to scare me off the bet, but I was just clicking around on here. This is Outlier. There's a link in the description if you want to try this website out. It has trends, all kinds of analytics on here. Next up, we got the Angels on the road in Seattle. Mariners pretty heavily favored in this one, minus 210. Total sitting at 7.5. We got Griffin Canning getting the start for the Angels. Luis Castillo pitching for the Mariners. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got to lean on Seattle here. 3.03 to 2.23 Seattle after 5 innings. 5.11 to 3.78 final score. So let's get into this one, and we'll start with some Angels hitting numbers. Not great. Definitely a bottom 10 lineup in the last 30 days, 24th, 25th, and 24th. Their numbers on the road, surprisingly, even worse. In the last 30 days, this is the worst road lineup in baseball, 30th across the board. They have been slightly better against righties in the last 30 days, 19th, 20th, and 20th, so I guess that's something, but definitely haven't been very good. The last 9 righty starters to pitch against the Angels, 3.60 ERA, 1.30 whip, so they haven't really been getting to righty starters. But when you look at the game logs, maybe we can cut them a little bit of slack, because they saw Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Luis Castillo, who they're seeing again, Joey Estes, and Mitch Spence, July 20th and 21st. When they saw some hittable righty arms, they actually were able to score some runs. And they hit Michael Lorenzen back on July 10th. So maybe, obviously this Angels lineup is not really hitting, but maybe we can take into account that they have seen some difficult starters. But the thing is, that doesn't really change here because they're seeing Luis Castillo again, and he's been pitching really well. In his last 3 starts, he's got a 1.83 ERA, 0.86 whip, 3.50 expected FIP. 3 solid starts in a row. He's been great at home all season. Last 5 home starts, 2.56 ERA, 0.85 whip. Here are his game logs. He pitched a great game at home against Houston. Shut this Angels lineup down in LA. 6 shutout innings, just 6 base runners. Excellent start against Toronto. So yeah, three great starts in a row for Castillo. Castillo's also got some dominant numbers against righty bats. 250 WOBA and an 0.92 whip. He struggles against lefties. Angels are going to have 6 righties in the lineup. This is a pretty righty-heavy lineup, so another positive angle for Castillo here, and it gets even better for Castillo. He throws the four-seam fastball a lot, 44.2% of the time. Angels, one of the worst lineups in baseball, hitting the four-seam fastball in the last 30 days. Now, we do have to mention that the Angels have seen Luis Castillo twice already this season, so that's a positive for the Angels, but he absolutely blanked this team both times. He's made 2 starts against them this year. He's 2-0 with a 0 ERA. Hasn't allowed a single earned run, 0.85 whip. So he was absolutely dominant in both his starts against the Angels this year. So I don't see any reason to bet against that happening again. He's probably pitching as well as he has all year right now, pitching against a team he's dominated, team that's not hitting. So yeah, I trust Luis Castillo here. On the other side, we got the Seattle Bats, and brace yourself, it's about to get ugly. On the last 30 days, this is one of the worst lineups in baseball. 27th in WRC+, 29th in OPS, 29th in WOBA. Keep in mind, this is also a lineup that just lost J.P. Crawford. He fractured his finger, so he's going to be missing from the lineup. Their numbers at home, even worse. 29th, 30th, and 30th. So the Mariners aren't hitting, they're not hitting at home, and they're certainly not hitting right-handed pitching. 28th, 30th, and 28th in the last 30 days. This is rock bottom for Seattle. These are some ugly-looking numbers. They're not getting to righty starters. The last 11 righties to pitch against the Mariners, 2.69 ERA, 1.10 whip. Same goes for the last 4 righty starters. Here are the game logs, and they did get to Ronel Blanco, so let's give him some credit. 4 earned runs, 7 base runners, pitched into the 6th inning. But before that, didn't get to Hunter Brown, Soriano. They actually got 9 base runners on Soriano, though, so maybe not quite as bad. Could make the argument that they got to 2 out of those top 3. Didn't get to Michael King, got to Mazur, got to Jose Barrios a little bit, didn't get to Yariel Rodriguez. So when you look at the game logs, maybe not quite as bad as the numbers indicate. So will they be able to get to Griffin Canning? And the numbers say probably, because he is really struggling. Griffin Canning in his last 4 starts has an even 8 ERA and a 1.83 whip, 5.16 expected FIP. It's looking pretty bad for Griffin Canning. His numbers on the road, surprisingly, even worse. His last 2 road starts, he's got an 11.74 ERA, 2.09 whip. Here are his game logs, and let's play a game. When's the last time Griffin Canning pitched a good game? You got to go back to June 24th, home against Oakland. Actually pitched really well in that one, but other than that, every other start on this chart here is bad. He got hit up in every single one. Now, if you are looking to back the Angels here, you can point at the fact that Griffin Canning's actually pitched pretty well against bad lineups. And when I say pretty well, I mean better than against good lineups. Against top 10 lineups this year, he's thrown 45 innings pitched, so he's pitched against a lot of good lineups. 6.80 ERA, 1.73 whip. In the 17 innings pitched, he pitched against bottom 10 lineups. 3.71 ERA and a 1.29 whip. So he's definitely been serviceable when he's gotten opportunities to pitch against bad lineups. He just hasn't had many of those opportunities here on the road in Seattle against arguably the worst home lineup in baseball, the worst lineup in baseball against righties. This is one of those opportunities. I don't like how Griffin Canning struggles against lefty bats, though. 3.77 WOBA and a 1.62 whip. Seattle's going to have 5 lefties in the lineup. Now, without J.P. Crawford, that is one less than normal. Usually they have 6. J.P. Crawford, like I mentioned, is out. So now it's down to 5 lefties most likely in this lineup. But still, that's a lot of lefties for a guy that has a 3.77 WOBA against lefties. I don't like that at all. Pitch mix-wise, he throws the 4-seam fastball, changeup, slider. Seattle 18th, 23rd, and 25th against those 3 pitches. So really nothing to take away there. As a whole on this side, I mean, pick your poison. You got Griffin Canning, who's getting rocked left and right. And you got the Seattle lineup that can't seem to touch anybody. I don't even know how to make a prediction there, honestly. Let's just move on to the bullpen matchup. Definitely Seattle. In the last 30 days, Seattle's a top half bullpen, 14th in ERA, 6th in WOBA. Angels are also a top 10 bullpen in the last 30 days, but the expected FIP numbers indicate they've gotten really lucky to have those numbers. And also on the season, no question, Seattle's been the much better bullpen. So bullpen edge goes to the Mariners. Offensively, pretty much a wash. Neither of these offenses have been particularly good in the late innings. As far as betting this game, I really like the Mariners here. I think Castillo's going to deal. Griffin Canning's been so bad. He's been especially bad on the road. I like the Mariners to win this game. But I don't know how in hell we could possibly consider laying minus 210 juice with a Mariners team that's one of the coldest lineups in baseball. They might be the coldest lineup in baseball right now. Actually, the White Sox probably are, but they're a close second. The Mariners just aren't hitting. So I don't know how we could consider laying minus 210 with them, even though I really do think they should win this game comfortably. So I guess if I had to bet this game, I'd probably take the Mariners money line and pair it with the Rangers. Oh, it's disgusting. That hurt coming out. As it was coming out of my mouth, it hurt. Oh, it's so disgusting. Mariners money line, Rangers money line parlay. Oh, I don't even want to say it. That's probably what I'd do if I was to bet this, though. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. Cleveland's definitely been the more profitable team this year, plus 9% on the season. Detroit's at minus 3.1%. But recently, it's been the opposite. If you've been backing the Tigers recently, you've been making some money, plus 36.9% ROI in the last 10 games. So let's go ahead and get into this one, and we'll start with the Tigers bats and check it out. In the last 30 days, the Tigers are a top 5 lineup in baseball. Detroit's coming around offensively after being one of the worst lineups in baseball for most of the season. Tigers are scoring some runs recently. Now, we do have to point out that most of their damage has come at home in Detroit. On the road in the last 30 days, it doesn't look that great. 17th, 15th, and 17th. But their numbers against right-handed pitching look solid. Last 30 days, the Tigers are a top 10 lineup in baseball against right-handed pitching, 9th, 9th, and 9th. Their numbers against righty starters look pretty solid. The last 4 righty starters to pitch against the Tigers, 6.66 ERA, 1.25 whip. So they are scoring runs on righty starters. And when you pull up the game logs, I mean, they scored 4 runs on Kevin Gausman. They got to Chris Bassett. They didn't really... So this Tanner Bybee one's important because that's who they're about to see. They did get to Tanner Bybee a little bit. They scored 4 runs off him, but he pitched 7 innings. So that's not as good as it looks maybe at first glance. But before that, they got to Ben Lively, who's having a good year. They got to Graham Ashcraft. So, I mean, numbers don't lie. The Tigers are getting to righty starters recently, which brings us to Tanner Bybee. As I'm sure you've heard by now, Tanner Bybee's having himself a solid season, 3.58 ERA, 1.11 whip on the year. In his last 6 starts, even better than that, 2.80 ERA and an 0.99 whip. His numbers at home look great. His last 6 home starts, he's got a 2.08 whip and an 0.95, a 2.08 ERA and an 0.95 whip. So he's been very good at home recently. Here are his game logs, and they're looking pretty good. He did get hit up by the Giants on July 5th. Other than that, I mean, you got the Tigers start on July 10th. We just talked about it, 4 runs, but he did go 7 innings. I mean, Tanner Bybee's been rock solid. Now, something that always worries me about Tanner Bybee are his numbers against lefty bats. 336 WOBA and a 130 whip against lefties. Much worse than his numbers against righty bats. But the thing is, Tigers are only projected to have 3 lefties in the lineup, 6 righties. They're a pretty righty-heavy lineup right now. So, actually, this is a pretty good matchup for Tanner Bybee. And he throws the 4-seam fastball. 44% of the time, it's his main pitch. Tigers are the worst lineup in baseball hitting the fastball in the last 30 days. But his other 2 pitches, the slider and the changeup, Tigers are top 5 in the last 30 days. So some good and some bad there. So overall, it's looking like a pretty solid matchup for Tanner Bybee so far. But he has terrible career numbers against his team. He's made 4 career starts against the Tigers. He's 0-3 with a 6.86 ERA and a 1.53 whip. For whatever reason, he just always seems to struggle with the Tigers. The current Detroit bats lifetime against Tanner Bybee, they're hitting 286 off him with a 785 OPS. So they've hit off Tanner Bybee. Even when the Tigers are cold, they still have found ways to hit off Tanner Bybee. So even though on paper it looks like a decent matchup for him, you take into account that the Tigers always seem to hit Tanner Bybee. They're hot right now against righty starters, and they just saw him 2 weeks ago. I think you can count on Detroit to score runs off Bybee. I like Detroit to score in the first 5 here. On the other side, we got the Cleveland Guardians bats, and it's gotten so bad. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 5 lineup. 25th in WRC+, 26th in OPS, 27th in WOBA. Their numbers at home have completely fallen off a cliff. This is one of the best home lineups in baseball for most of the season. In the last 30 days, 19th, 24th, and 24th. Their numbers against right-handed pitching have also completely fallen off. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 2, bottom 3 lineup in baseball against righties. 29th in WRC+, 28th in OPS, 29th in WOBA. Look at their numbers against righty starters. This is actually crazy. The last 16 righty starters to pitch against the Guardians. 2.19 ERA, 0.97 whip. The last 7, 0.80 ERA and an 0.71 whip. They are not touching righty starters. And look at the game logs. I mean, Michael King, Dylan Cease, Matt Waldron, Ryan Pepio, Zach Littell, Taj Bradley, Jack Flaherty. All of them just blanking the Guardians. And this goes back for 16. I'm pretty sure it's 14 of the last 16 righty starters to pitch against Cleveland pitched a great game. So I don't know how we could have any faith in the Guardians bats getting to a righty starter right now. And it's not just any righty starter, it's Jack Flaherty. In his last 6 starts, he's got a 2.45 ERA, 0.88 whip, 3.26 expected FIP. He's been excellent. He's been even better than that on the road. In his last 5 road starts, 2.25 ERA, 0.71 whip. Jack Flaherty definitely having a career year. And here are his game logs. I mean, great start against Toronto. Excellent start against this Cleveland Guardians team. I mean, he did have one bad start on the road in LA on June 27th, but other than that, he's been almost untouchable. Now, you always have to look at righty-lefty splits when you're handicapping a Cleveland Guardians game because they have so many lefties in the lineup. 8. They're projected to have 8 lefties in the lineup. But the thing is, Jack Flaherty's fine when you look at his splits. In fact, he's even slightly better against lefty bats. So that's actually a good sign for Jack Flaherty. And pitch mix-wise, he throws the 4-seam fastball, the slider, and the knuckle curve. Cleveland bottom half of baseball against all 3 of those pitches in the last 30 days. And unlike Tanner Bybee, Jack Flaherty's been fine pitching against Cleveland. He's pitched against them twice already this season. He's 1-1, but he's got a 2.25 ERA and an 0.92 whip. So he's pitched really well against this team so far this year. And the Cleveland bats lifetime off Flaherty, they're hitting 233 with a 681 OPS. So they haven't really gotten to Jack Flaherty. I mean, the handicap in the first 5 is pretty simple here. I don't know how you doubt Jack Flaherty. And I think Detroit can get to Tanner Bybee. So I like the edge for the Tigers in the first 5. When we get to the bullpen matchup, got to give it to Cleveland, even though the Tigers' bullpen has been better. But in the last 30 days, Cleveland's bullpen is 8th in ERA, 13th in WOBA. Tigers 18th and 17th. So bullpen slight edge goes to Cleveland. Offensively against bullpens, though, you would have to give the edge to Detroit. I mean, not that they've even been great in the late innings in the last 30 days. They're 24th in WRC+, 20th in OPS, 21st in WOBA. But Cleveland's dead last. Guardians lineup has been so dead in the late innings. So offensively in the late innings, edge goes to the Tigers, but Cleveland has the better bullpen. As far as betting this game, no question I'm on the Tigers here. I already bet it. I got it at plus 130. The reason I liked Cleveland today, and I didn't bet it, but on the live show I said I liked Cleveland tonight, was because there was a lefty on the mound. They were actually going to see a pair of lefties between Holton and Joey Wentz. Cleveland's slump that we've been talking about, that's against righty starters. They've been hitting lefties just fine. So I was still down to back Cleveland earlier tonight against the lefty. I wish I did. I didn't. But now, not only is it a righty back on the mound for Detroit, but it's Jack Flaherty. So I'm sure he'll pitch fine. I have all the confidence in the world for him to pitch well on the road here. Tigers also just saw the main bullpen arms from Cleveland, Clase, and those guys. So, yeah, I'm on the Tigers, plus 130. Next up, we got the Subway Series. Mets are in Yankee Stadium. Yanks are favored at home, minus 166. Total sitting at 8.5. We got Sean Manaea pitching for the Mets. Garrett Cole is on the mound for the Yanks. If we take a quick look at the spreadsheet, this one's pretty much deadlocked. 2.89 to 2.81 Yankees after 5 innings. 5 even to 4.76 Yankees final score. So model has this one really close. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. These two teams pretty much dead even, both around break even on the year. Mets are plus 0.8% on the season. The Yankees are plus 0.3%. In the last 10 games, Mets have been more profitable though. plus 12.3%. Yankees are minus 11.3%. So as of late, betting the Mets has been slightly more profitable than betting the Yankees. So let's go ahead and get into it. In the last 30 days, the Mets are the best lineup in baseball still, because we're talking about the last 30 days when they were actually absolutely killing teams about 3 weeks ago. First in WRC plus, first in OPS, first in WOBA. Their numbers on the road have dipped in the last 30 days, 16th, 13th, and 15th. There was a while, you rewind a month and a half ago, the Mets were the best road lineup in baseball. Definitely fallen off a little bit, sitting at about average in the last 30 days. Numbers against right-handed pitching look great. Second across the board in the last 30 days, so they still have great-looking numbers against right-handed pitching. Not so much against right-handed starters, but maybe they're back. So the last 7 righties to pitch against the Mets, 3.19 ERA and a 1.16 WHIP. Obviously, that's not good. When you look at the game logs, I mean, they didn't get to Roddery Munoz. But before that, I mean, they got to Edward Cabrera. They had 10 base runners and 4 2/3 innings pitched. They only scored 1 earned run, but they got to him. They crushed Feltner, crushed Jake Irvin, and then you get back to Mitch Keller, Paul Skeens, Jake Irvin, and they weren't hitting righty starters there for a little stretch. They also, not included on here, they just got to Yanni Chirinos last night. So that's not on this graphic. The graphic must not have updated from last night. They crushed Yanni Chirinos. So if you put Yanni Chirinos at the top of this graphic, then actually the Mets have gotten to 4 of the last 5 righty starters they've seen. Not the most impressive names, but maybe Grimace is back as far as getting to righty starters. But this isn't any righty starter. We're talking about Garrett Cole. But we'll start with some good news for the Mets. They don't have problems with Garrett Cole. He's made 8 career starts against the Mets. He's got a 6.64 ERA and a 1.72 WHIP. The Mets have not had problems hitting off Garrett Cole in his career. They just saw him, by the way, on June 25th, less than a month ago. 7 hits, 6 runs, 4 homers. So they smoked Garrett Cole less than a month ago. That being said, we do have to mention that Garrett Cole's been looking pretty good. In his last 2 starts, 1.50 ERA, 1.08 WHIP. Last 4 starts, 2.95 ERA, 1.22 WHIP. Looks like he's really coming into form. His numbers at home don't look that great, but we're talking about 3 home starts, and 1 was his first start back when he was on a pitch limit, so we can just disregard his home numbers because super small sample size. Here are his game logs, and you can see back-to-back nice-looking starts. Home against the Rays, 6 innings, 1 earned run, 7 base runners. On the road in Baltimore, this was a great start. 6 innings pitched, just 1 earned run, 6 base runners. So back-to-back starts where Garrett Cole's starting to look like himself. He also has better-looking splits against righty bats. Now, again, we're talking about 6 starts here, so small sample size, but a 1.14 WHIP against righties compared to a 1.59 against lefties. The reason that's significant is the Mets are a super righty-heavy lineup. 6 righties projected to be in the lineup for the Mets. So that's a solid look for Garrett Cole. Pitch mix-wise, though, he throws a 4-seam fastball, which is not a good sign when you're pitching against the Mets. The Mets have been one of the best lineups in baseball hitting the 4-seam fastball all year. They do struggle against the cutter, but they hit the knuckle curve well. They hit the slider well. So pitch mix-wise, I actually like this look for the Mets. As a whole on this side, I trust Garrett Cole right now. He looked really good in his last 2 starts, but it's hard to argue with the fact that the Mets always seem to hit Garrett Cole. So even though I don't want to fade Garrett Cole, I think we can count on the Mets to score at least a couple runs off them because they always seem to. On the other side, we got the Yankees bats. Last 30 days, 6th in WRC plus, 13th OPS, 9th in WOBA. So, all right, Yankees may be coming back into form offensively. Not so much at home, though. I mean, last 30 days at home, 16th, 20th, and 18th. But if you look at the last 14 days, looking better than that. But again, that includes the All-Star break, super small sample size. Here are the numbers against left-handed pitching. Last 30 days, 17th, 23rd, and 19th. They've got better looking numbers against righties than lefties. Their numbers against lefty starters do not look good. The last 9 lefty starters to pitch against the Yankees, 3.30 ERA and a 1.29 WHIP. Here are the game logs, and I actually just talked about this in last night's video because they're playing against Quintana tonight, actually. So by the time you're watching this, we'll see how they look against Quintana tonight. I expect them to hit Quintana. But if you look at the game logs of the lefty starters they've seen before tonight, Cade Povich they got to, didn't get to Abbott, didn't really get to Kikuchi, didn't get to Manaea, who we're talking about in this video. Manaea pitched against them on June 26th, 5 shutout innings, just 7 base runners. So they weren't really able to get to him in late June. That being said, the current Yankees lineup actually has really nice looking career numbers against them. Lifetime, the current Yankees bats, 16 of 57, so they're in 281 lifetime off them, 853 OPS with 3 homers. So in the past, the Yankees bats have had success hitting off Manaea. They just weren't able to do it on June 26th. And let's give Manaea some credit. He really is having a solid season. 3.73 ERA, 1.24 WHIP on the year. Last 5 starts, 2.70, 1.13, looking good. His numbers on the road also look pretty good. 3.10 ERA, 1.20 WHIP on the season. 3.42 and 1.10 in his last 4 road starts. Now, expected FIP numbers on the road are a little scary, indicating he's had some good luck in his road starts, but still, let's give him some credit. He's been pitching well. But when we pull up his game logs, you can see that he got rocked in his last start, man. On the road in Miami, 5 earned runs, 9 base runners, and just 5 innings of work. But before that, every single start on this graphic is solid. I mean, some of them are actually excellent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 consecutive great starts before that Miami. So is that Miami game just one outlier in the data and now he should get back to work throwing great again? Or was that the beginning of his expected FIP numbers starting to catch up to him? Because his expected FIP numbers, especially on the road, indicate that there's regression coming. Personally, I think it's a little unrealistic that Sean Manaea keeps this up all season. I expect him to get hit up a little bit more in the second half of the season than he has so far. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and start getting shelled every week, but I do expect him to be not quite as good as he was to start the year. I'm also a little worried about his splits against top 10 lineups. 4.80 ERA and a 1.40 whip against top 10 lineups versus lefties. Now, I don't know if we can consider the Yankees a top 10 lineup versus lefties. Against righties, I would, but not so much against lefties, so I don't know how much that comes into play here. That's definitely not something I like to see. I also don't love how his main pitches are the sinker and the slider. Yankees are top 10 in baseball against those two pitches in the last 30 days. As a whole on this side, Manaea has been so solid, and the Yankees don't have great numbers against lefty bats. Definitely going to wait and see how the Yankees hit Quintana in a couple hours. I think Manaea is going to start to regress, and I personally think the Yankees are going to hit him. I'm not going to place any bets based on that right now, but I think Manaea might be a fade moving forward. Bullpen-wise, no question, edge goes to the Yankees. That bullpen's all the way back. In the last 14 days, they're starting to look like a top 5 bullpen. Small sample size, but still, look at the last 30 days, much better than where we were 3-4 weeks ago. Meanwhile, the Mets bullpen is having all kinds of problems. Now, like I said yesterday, with Edwin Diaz back from suspension and Maton added from the Rays, Mets bullpen should be better down the stretch, but still, bullpen edge goes to the Yankees. Offensively, against bullpens, pretty even in the last 30 days. Mets are top 10, Yankees are top 5, so maybe slight edge to the Yankees in the late innings overall. As far as betting this game, this sucks, man. I like the Yankees. I do. I think Garrett Cole's going to deal, but I just got smoked on the Yankees earlier tonight, and I watched every pitch of the game, and I was so frustrated. 4 full innings against the Mets' terrible bullpen that was taxed with no Diaz, no Budo, and they still couldn't do shit. So my faith in the Yankees right now, I mean, obviously I'm suffering from a little bit of recency bias having just watched that full game, but I'm so down on the Yankees right now, even though I think on paper this should be a nice spot to play in New York at the minus 160 or even lay the 1.5. And then you add on the fact that Garrett Cole's had problems pitching against the Mets in the past, and I just don't think I could do it. So, I mean, I guess over or pass here? I don't know. I like the Yankees. So let's say Yankees minus 1.5 or pass. But after last night, I won't be doing that. Next up, we got Tampa on the road in Toronto. Blue Jays short home dogs here, plus 100. Total sitting at 8. We got Zach Eflin pitching against Yariel Rodriguez. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got a slight lean on Tampa, 2.46 to 2.59. Lean on Tampa final score as well, 5.13 to 4.6. Before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. Tampa has been the more profitable team this year, minus 6.3% on the season. Toronto sitting at minus 12.6%. Tampa's also been more profitable in the last 10 games as well, plus 20.9%. Toronto has been profitable, though, plus 4% in the last 10. So let's get into this one. We'll start with the Tampa bats, looking pretty average. In the last 30 days, 11th in WRC+, 17th in OPS, 17th in WOBA. Same goes for their numbers on the road, pretty average. Last 30 days, 15th, 16th, and 16th. The numbers against right-handed pitching are not average, though they're well below average. In the last 30 days, this is a borderline bottom 5 lineup in baseball against righties. 23rd, 26th, and 25th. They're not getting to righty starters either. The last 4 righties to pitch against the Rays combined for a 2.49 ERA and a 1.11 whip. So they have not been getting to right-handed pitching. They have not been getting to right-handed starters. Here are the game logs of righty starters against the Rays, and I mean, didn't get to Stroman, didn't get to Garrett Cole, didn't get to Ben Lively, didn't get to Carlos Carrasco. So this is definitely not a good sign. They did get to Marcus Stroman back on July 10th, but even before that, didn't get to Evaldi, didn't get to Michael Lorenzen. So Tampa definitely not getting to righty starters right now. So will they get to Yariel Rodriguez? His last 2 starts, he's got a 1.80 ERA and an even 1 whip. His numbers on the season look okay. I mean, 3.67 ERA, 1.37 WHIP. I mean, those numbers look pretty good, but if you look at his game logs, it's a little bit deceiving. I'll show you in a second. His numbers at home look pretty solid. Small sample size here. On the year at home, he's got a 2.57 ERA and a 1.36 WHIP. Here are his game logs, and you can see there's some bullpen appearances in here. There's a start where he only went 4 innings, so the numbers might be a little bit deceiving, but there are a couple nice starts here. July 6th on the road in Seattle. Mariners lineup sucks, but still 6 shutout innings, just 3 base runners. I mean, home against the Astros is a good one because he struggles against righty bats. They're loaded with righties. Pitched into the 7th inning, just 1 earned run, 4 base runners. So that's an excellent start. Before that, you can find some really ugly starts here. He got crushed by Cleveland, got crushed by the Royals a couple times back in April. As a whole, there are a couple really nice starts here for Yariel Rodriguez. And I mentioned how he struggles against righty bats. 3.66 WOBA against righties. It's 2.48 against lefties. It's much better against lefty bats. Tampa's going to have 5 lefties in the lineup, though. Just 4 right-handed bats scheduled to be in the lineup for Tampa. So that's a nice sign for Yariel Rodriguez. Pitch mix-wise, though, I don't like this. Throws the 4-seam fastball, the slider, the sinker, and the splitter. Tampa, against those pitches, is in the top half of baseball against the main 3, which I don't like. So because Tampa hasn't been hitting very well, they've actually been hitting those pitches pretty well. As a whole on this side, I mean, I don't have a ton of faith in Yariel Rodriguez, but we have seen a couple nice starts from him recently. Tampa hasn't gotten to a righty starter in 2 weeks since before the All-Star break. I think we can trust him here. Honestly, I think Yariel Rodriguez could pitch a good game. Now we get to the other side. Let's look at the Toronto bats. Last 30 days, slightly above average. 13th in WRC+, 14th in OPS, 14th in WOBA. Same goes for their numbers at home. In the last 30 days, slightly above average. So they've been okay at home. Pretty good overall. And the same goes for right-handed pitching as well. Last 30 days, 12th, 12th, and 12th. So they've been slightly above average across the board in all their hitting splits. Decent start for Toronto. And they've also been getting to righty starters. The last 6 righties to pitch against the Blue Jays, 6.93 ERA, 1.38 WHIP. So Toronto's definitely gotten to righty starters. Here are the game logs. And I mean, Reese Olson only pitched 2 innings, so that's a weird one. Didn't get to Jack Flaherty, but nobody's getting to Jack Flaherty this year. They crushed Zach Gallen. Didn't get to Ryan Nelson, but before that, they crushed Jordan Hicks, crushed Logan Webb, got to George Kirby a little bit. I'm not saying these game logs are excellent for Toronto's bats, but this is a good sign. We've seen this Toronto lineup really slump against righty starters. They've gotten to a few recently. So will they get to Zach Eflin? Well, in his last 5 starts, he's got a 4.20 ERA and a 1.17 WHIP. Not bad numbers, but we've definitely seen him pitch much better than this. His last 3 starts, 5.29 ERA. But the key factor of this game is that it's in Toronto, because as we know, Zach Eflin on the road is a different pitcher than him at home at the Trop. In his last 5 road starts, he's got a 6.07 ERA. His last 2 road starts, 8.10 ERA and a 1.90 WHIP. Here are his game logs, and I will say his last start against the Yankees a little bit unfair. On the road in Yankee Stadium, and the Yankees had just seen him 9 days before that. So that's definitely a little bit unfair. But before that, on the road in Kansas City, they crushed him on the 4th of July. Before that, he gave up 4 runs on the road in Pittsburgh, but only 6 base runners in 7 innings. That's solid. And before that, on the road in Atlanta, he got hit up a little bit. So definitely, numbers are clear. Zach Eflin, more vulnerable on the road, no question. Eflin's also much better against lefty bats. 275 WOBA and a 111 WHIP against lefties. Against righties, 328 and 122. So definitely better against lefty bats, but he's pitching against Toronto. Blue Jays are scheduled to have 6 righties in the lineup. This is a righty-heavy lineup, so that's not a good sign for Eflin. A good sign for Eflin would be that he throws the sinker, though, 31% of the time, and the Blue Jays have been terrible against that pitch, but he also throws the cutter a lot, and the Blue Jays are top 10 in baseball against that. So some good and some bad here. But what I really don't like in this matchup for Zach Eflin is his history against this team, specifically this season. He's made 2 starts against Toronto already. He's 0-1 with a 7.71 ERA and a 1.37 WHIP. So he struggled when he saw Toronto this year. It's on the road in Toronto where we know we can fade Zach Eflin. Toronto's been getting to some righty starters recently. I think we can count on the Blue Jays to score some runs here off Eflin. As far as the bullpen matchup, I mean, I guess you got to give the edge to Tampa, but not by much. Tampa's been a bottom 10 bullpen in the last 30 days, but Toronto's just been one of the worst bullpens in baseball. So I guess a slight edge to Tampa in the bullpen department. Offensively against bullpens, though, all Toronto. Top 10 lineup in the, 11th, 10th, and 12th in the last 30 days for the Blue Jays. Offensively against bullpens, it's pretty even. Last couple weeks, tilts towards the Blue Jays, but as far as the last 30 days goes, Tampa's 9th, 13th, and 10th. Toronto 11th, 10th, and 12th. So they're pretty much even in the late innings. As far as betting this game, I'm definitely on the Blue Jays in this one. I already bet it. I got it at plus 104. Yariel Rodriguez, even though he's not a guy I really blindly trust, he should be fine here making a home start against a Rays team that's really struggling to get to righty starters. And Zach Eflin, on the road, we can fade him. Against a bunch of righties, we can fade him. And against a team that historically he's struggled against. So, yeah, I expect the Blue Jays bats to get to Zach Eflin. And then you add on the fact that the Rays use their major bullpen arms. Definitely on Toronto here, money line. Next up, we got the White Sox on the road in Texas. Rangers are heavily favored here at home, minus 250. Total sitting at 8.5. We got Chris Flexen on the mound for the White Sox. Nate Eovaldi's pitching for the Rangers. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got a heavy lean on the Rangers here. 3.19 to 1.73 after 5 innings. Final score 5.06 to 3.12. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. Texas has definitely been the more profitable team this year, considering the White Sox are the least profitable team in baseball. Minus 37.4% ROI on the season. Texas hasn't been great, but they have been turning a profit in the last 10 games. So if you've been betting the Rangers recently, you've made a few dollars. So let's go ahead and get into this one. We'll start with the White Sox bats. Worst lineup in baseball across the board. Full season, last 30 days, last 14 days, nothing but 30s in true White Sox fashion. Their numbers on the road aren't much better. In the last 30 days, they're a bottom 5 lineup on the road. Same goes for the last 14 days. Pretty bad across the board here. Their numbers against right-handed pitching, you guessed it, awful. On the season, this is the worst lineup in baseball against right-handed pitching. In the last 30 days, 30th, 29th, and 30th. So they're not hitting. They're not hitting on the road. They're not hitting righties. And they're certainly not getting to righty starters. The last 4 righty starters to pitch against the White Sox, 104 ERA, 0.85 whip. So they're not touching righty starters. And then when you look at the game logs, confirms it. Seth Lugo, Brady Singer, Michael Wacha, back-to-back nights all through gems. 7 shutout innings, a complete game, 3-hit, 1-run game from Seth Lugo. Before that, I mean, if you scroll back to early July, there was a couple times where White Sox were able to score a run or two. But as a whole, this White Sox lineup is not touching right-handed pitching right now, which brings us to Eovaldi. Now, Eovaldi's coming off a rough start. He did just get hit up by Baltimore, but other than that, he's been as reliable as it gets. This year, he's got a 3.36 ERA, 107 whip. Last 4 starts look great, even with that ugly start against Baltimore mixed in. His numbers at home in Arlington look great. 2.69 ERA, 0.85 whip at home this year. Last 6 home starts look great. Last 3 home starts look great. Here are his game logs, and you see that ugly Baltimore game right on top, July 19th. 8 hits, 6 earned runs in just 5 innings. Rough game. Other than that, I mean, nothing but good starts here. You go back to June 15th. He did struggle on the road in Seattle, but before that is more good starts. Eovaldi's had a great season. Now, there is something here for Eovaldi, and I don't know if this worries me or not. Kind of tongue-in-cheek, might be a little thin, but he's actually been better against good lineups. Against top 10 lineups versus righties this year, he's got a 4.78 ERA, 116 whip. Look at his numbers against bottom 10 lineups. It really hasn't been that good. 4.05 ERA and a 150 whip. So you would think Eovaldi at home against the White Sox, this is a time for him to dominate. But on the season, he really hasn't been that good when he's pitched against bad lineups. Now, the good news for Eovaldi is the White Sox have basically no lefties in the lineup. He's definitely much better against righty bats. 267 WOBA, 096 whip against righties. Not that he's terrible against lefties, but 307, 120, just definitely worse against lefty bats. White Sox, as we know, one of the most righty-heavy lineups in baseball. 7 projected right-handed bats in the lineup for the White Sox. So that's a great look for Eovaldi. Also, his pitch mix, his main 2 pitches, the fastball and the splitter. White Sox bottom 10 in baseball against both those pitches. Here's where it gets a little concerning for Eovaldi, though. He's actually struggled against the White Sox. He's made 3 starts against them since 2021. He's 1-1 with a 5.71 ERA, 144 whip. So he's struggled against this team in the past. And also, the current White Sox bats right now, combined 53 career plate appearances. They're hitting 312 off him with a 940 OPS. So they have great lifetime numbers off Eovaldi. So there's a lot of positive angles for Eovaldi. Obviously, on paper, he should dominate the White Sox, but there actually are a couple angles that indicate the White Sox might score runs on him. On the other side, we got the Rangers bats, just slightly below average pretty much everywhere. In the last 30 days, they're 20th in WRC+, 18th in OPS, 18th in WOBA. Their numbers at home pretty much exactly the same as that. 22nd, 18th, and 19th. Their numbers against right-handed pitching actually slightly worse than that. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 10 lineup against right-handed pitching, and that's not new. We've been talking about the Rangers' struggles against righties all year. Here are the numbers against righty starters. It's not good. The last 5 righty starters to pitch against the Rangers, 2.76 ERA, 0.95 WHIP. So they haven't been getting to righty starters. And here are the game logs. You can see they did get to Dean Kremer on July 21st, so they got to one. Before that, didn't get to Grayson Rodriguez, Corbin Burns, Ronel Blanco, Spencer Arrighetti, Hunter Brown. 5 in a row, all pitched great games against the Rangers. Now, something I like here for the Rangers bats is most of their struggles have come against good righties. Check these differences out. So against righty starters with an ERA below 3.50, they're pretty much the worst lineup in baseball. But against righty starters with an ERA above 5, they're actually a top 10 lineup. That definitely describes Chris Flexen, who's sitting at a 5.22. So the Rangers, despite having terrible numbers against righty starters, on the year, they've actually been good against bad righty starters. And when you look at Chris Flexen's numbers, I mean, he hasn't been practical joke terrible, but he's definitely probably close to being a bad starter. I mean, his last 7 starts, he's got a 5.50 ERA, 1.57 WHIP. His numbers out on the road even worse than that. His last 5 road starts, 8.61 ERA, 1.70 WHIP. Here are his game logs. He just got rocked in Kansas City. Before that, there's actually some quality starts littered in here. I mean, he pitched okay against Pittsburgh, pitched somewhat okay against the Twins, pitched somewhat okay against Cleveland. Then before that, the Dodgers crushed him. He also got crushed by Arizona back on June 14th. So it's a little concerning to see 2 of his last 3 road starts were absolute disasters. Chris Flexen also has some shaky-looking splits against lefty bats. 371 WOBA and a 141 WHIP against lefties this year. Rangers are projected to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lefties in the lineup. Definitely don't like that for Chris Flexen. Also, despite the Rangers' struggles, they actually have good hitting numbers against his pitch mix. Throws the 4-seam fastball and the cutter. Those are his 2 main pitches. The Rangers are 10th and 14th in the last 30 days against those pitches. Now, to be fair to Chris Flexen, we do have to mention that he has great history against this team. Since 2021, he's made 5 starts against Texas. He's 3-0 with a 1.62 ERA and an 0.81 WHIP. Those are elite numbers. But the thing is, maybe a little bit of a grain of salt as far as taking these numbers because they're when he was with Seattle. And you remember, he had that really good year with the Mariners. I mean, Chris Flexen now certainly is not the Chris Flexen of then. So maybe take these numbers with a grain of salt or just throw them out altogether. The current Rangers lineup lifetime against Chris Flexen, 97 career plate appearances. They're hitting 278 off him with an 852 OPS. So the current Rangers bats have solid lifetime numbers against Flexen. Overall on this side, I mean, Chris Flexen making a road start. I know the Rangers have really struggled to get the righty starters, but I can't back this guy in a road start. So I'm sure Texas will be able to get at least a couple runs across. As far as the bullpen battle, got to give the edge to Texas here. In the last 30 days, the Rangers bullpen 12th in ERA, 7th in WOBA. White Sox have had a bottom 10, pretty much a bottom 5 bullpen all year. In the last 30 days, 22nd and 18th. Offensively, against bullpens, I mean, these are 2 of the worst offenses in baseball in the late innings, so no edge there. Slight edge in the late innings to the Rangers based on their bullpen being better. As far as betting this game, I feel the same about this game as I do about the Mariners game I was talking about earlier. I think the Rangers would be the move here, and I think they should win comfortably, but I just can't lay minus 250 with a team that isn't hitting. I mean, they're not as bad as the Mariners have been, but still minus 250. And then you add on the fact that what's-his-name's not going to be available. They used Yates 3 nights in a row, so they're going to be missing their closer. So there's a chance if it's a close game, the Rangers are going to have someone else close. I don't know. Too many moving pieces. Minus 250 sucks. So I guess I'll say Rangers and Mariners moneyline parlay or pass. I'm not betting that shit, but that's what I would do. Next up, we got Arizona on the road in Kansas City. Royals slight favorites at home here, minus 125. Total sitting at 9.5. We got Ryan Nelson on the mound pitching against Michael Wacha for the Royals. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got to lean on KC here. 2.67 to 2.26 after 5 innings. 4.93 to 4.33 final score. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. Kansas City's definitely been the more profitable team this year, plus 8% ROI on the season. Arizona's minus 1.5%. Last 10 games, Kansas City may be back too, plus 41% ROI in the last 10 games for the Royals. So let's get into this one, and we'll start with the Snakes bats. In the last 30 days, this is a top 10 lineup, 10th in WRC+, 6th in OPS, 7th in WOBA. As far as their numbers on the road, looking excellent. In the last 30 days, this is actually the best road lineup in baseball. First across the board, and same goes for their numbers against right-handed pitching. Last 30 days, 6th, 6th, and 6th. So Arizona's been hitting, they've been hitting on the road, and they've been hitting righties. If you use a last 30-day sample size. Now, last couple weeks, you can find some instances where they seem to be cooling off a little bit, but I think they're back. We'll get into it right now. You can see here the last 2 righty starters to pitch against the Snakes, 7.88 ERA, 2.25 whip, and that's huge because before that, let's pull up the game logs. It looked like that run of Arizona crushing righty starters, it looked like it might have been coming to an end. I mean, they didn't really get to Randy Vasquez, Matt Waldron, Dylan Cease, Bryce Elder they didn't really get to. And it was like, okay, it looks like the Snakes' reign of terror against righty starters may be coming to a close. But then they got to Yariel Rodriguez and Jose Berrios. So personally, I think we can still count on the Arizona lineup against righty starters. It's been so reliable all season backing this Arizona lineup against righty starters. So I still trust them. We also should mention that they crushed Michael Wacha last year. April 20th of 2023, Michael Wacha made a start against Arizona, got rocked. 10 hits, 5 earned runs, and just 4 innings of work. They also have really nice lifetime numbers against Michael Wacha. 33 for 101 lifetime. They're hitting 327 off him with an 879 OPS. So really nice career numbers for the Arizona Bats against Michael Wacha. But let's give Michael Wacha some credit. He's having a great season. In his last 4 starts, 193 ERA, 116 whip. Excellent numbers. Even better than that at home. His last 5 home starts, 176 ERA, 104 whip. Michael Wacha's truly been great. Let's give him some credit. Here are his game logs, and I mean 7 shutout innings against the White Sox. He did struggle with the Cardinals on July 10th, but before that, great start against Tampa. Not a great start against Cleveland, actually. 9 base runners and 5 1/3 isn't good. Great start against Texas, great start against the Padres. But that's kind of the point I want to make. Who has he pitched against? The White Sox, the Cardinals, he struggled against them. The Rays, Cleveland, they've been slumping bad against righties. Texas, they never hit righties. Padres, I mean, now we're all the way back at May 31st. So since he returned from injury, check this out. Who has he really pitched against? He looks great, but who has he really pitched against since returning from injury? I mean, that's a concern because now he's going to be pitching against Arizona, one of the more dangerous lineups against right-handed starters in baseball. And when you look at his splits against top 10 and bottom 10 lineups, it's concerning. Against top 10 lineups versus righties this year, he's only thrown 16 1/3 innings pitched. 5.51 ERA, 135 whip. He's thrown 53 1/3 innings pitched against bottom 10 lineups versus righties. So Michael Wacha, as great of a season as he's having, he's pitched against a lot of bad lineups. That is something we have to point out. He also struggles against lefty bats. 332 WOBA and a 130 whip against lefties. Way worse than his numbers against righties. 268 WOBA and a 112 whip. Arizona's scheduled to have 5 lefties in the lineup, including their first 3 batters. Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Jock Peterson. Lefty, lefty, lefty at the top of the order. Definitely don't like that for Michael Wacha. Also, his pitch mix. Changeup, 4-seam fastball are his 2 main pitches. Arizona, the best lineup in baseball, hitting the fastball on the full season and in the last 30 days. So as good as Michael Wacha's been, and I've won bets backing Michael Wacha this season, I don't like this for him. I think Arizona's going to get to him. But on the other side, we got the Royals bats, and is this lineup back? In the last 30 days, numbers are looking pretty average. Same goes for their numbers at home. Actually, they're looking slightly above average in the last 30 days. 14th, 9th, and 9th. Their numbers against right-handed pitching climbing back up in the last 30 days. 13th, 8th, and 9th. So is this Royals lineup back? I think the answer might be yes. Now, their numbers against right-handed starters don't look great, but this is a large sample size. This is the last 10. 4.31 ERA, 122 whip. If you look at the game log, struggled to get to Andrew Thorpe, but they got to Jonathan Cannon, they got to Chris Flexen, they got to Brian Bayo. And this graphic doesn't include that kid Diaz, that was last night. So put Diaz at the top of this chart. That's another righty, and you can make the point that the Royals have gotten to 4 of the last 5 righty starters they've seen. So I think the idea that Kansas City's lineup might be back to hitting where they were earlier in the season, I think there's some truth to that. And they crushed Ryan Nelson last time they saw him. April 25th of last year, 5 innings pitched, 11 hits, 4 earned runs. The Royals got to Ryan Nelson last time they saw him. Now, Ryan Nelson, just like Michael Wacha, he's having himself a pretty good year. Really good lately. His last 3 starts, 2.33 ERA, 0.72 whip, 2.96 expected FIP. He's been great on the road. In fact, that dates back to last year, too. He was great on the road last year. His last 5 road starts, 3.25 ERA, 1.05 whip. But when you pull up Ryan Nelson's game logs, I kind of have the same question about Nelson that I had about Wacha. Who is this dude pitching against? On the road in Wrigley, the Blue Jays don't really hit righties. The Padres, the Dodgers, I'll give you that one. That's a great start. The Twins, who were hot against righties, they crushed them. the Nats, the White Sox. Definitely questionable opponents here for Ryan Nelson. The Royals at home in Kansas City, that's a tough test. The Royals also have a couple dangerous right-handed bats at the top of that lineup. Bobby Witt Jr., Sal Perez at 2 and 4. Ryan Nelson against righties this year, 371 WOBA and a 166 whip. He's really struggled against righty bats. Don't love the look of that. Even though the Royals do have 5 lefties, they're not an overly righty-heavy lineup, but still just a couple dangerous righties there. Pitch mix-wise, though, this looks good for Ryan Nelson. Throws a 4-seam fastball and the cutter, and the Royals have been terrible against those 2 pitches in the last 30 days. But that's not enough for me to trust Ryan Nelson here. I know he's been great on the road, but I think the Royals bats might be back, and I'm not trying to step in front of them. So I expect the Royals to get to Ryan Nelson just like I expect the Diamondbacks to get to Waka. So I'm leaning towards a first 5 over here before I even get started. Bullpen matchup, pretty even here, and you would think Kansas City versus Arizona, that if they're pretty even, that means they're both terrible. Nah, both these units are coming around. In fact, both the Royals and the Diamondbacks, who have had terrible bullpens for pretty much the whole season, in the last 30 days, both are top half units. So the Royals added Hunter Harvey. Clearly that bullpen's going to be better moving forward. And the D-backs bullpen seems to be coming around as well. So pretty even there. Offensively against bullpens, again, pretty even. I mean, the last 30 days, advantage goes to Arizona. The last 14 days, last 7 days, advantage goes to Kansas City. So pretty much a wash there. As far as betting this game, I'm not going to pick a side because it feels really coin flippy, but I do like both starting pitchers to get hit up, which points me towards the over, but it's all the way up at 9.5, which is just killing me. This is killing me. 9.5. I mean, I guess I'll say over 9.5. I did find something on Outlier for this game that you might like. Let's go over. Let's see. Royals, Diamondbacks, Royals. Michael Wacha has exceeded 4.5 strikeouts in 13 of his last 17 home games. You guys know I'm not much of a strikeout prop guy, but that's at plus 106. So if you like strikeout props, I don't even know if the Arizona Diamondbacks are a strikeout team or not. I just thought 13 out of 17 at plus money was worth mentioning on the video. As far as my bet here, over, you know what? I might bet this over. There's been some high totals in this ballpark all season. I'll say over 9.5 for this one. I haven't bet it yet, though. Like I said earlier, live show, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. We'll go through every single game on the board, make our final decisions. Hopefully Wednesday goes better than Tuesday night for me. God damn. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. If you want my top bets or top bets from anyone on the staff here, head over to KyleKirms.com and sign up for Sauce Network Plus. Comes with the top bets, access to the Discord, and you can participate in the weekly betting league. You get a trophy and $100 go to the winner every single week. So if you're interested in any of that, head over to KyleKirms.com and sign up. Let's have ourselves a nice Wednesday. I need a bounce back, man. Remember to bet responsibly, and I'll talk to you in the Discord.